Welcome to Boss Builds, where we here at Dungeonmancers take normal monsters and make them extraordinary. Today, we talk about cultists. Now, I'm joined here with Lord George, the inevitable. From what I understand, you have had quite a few run-ins with and experiences with cultists in the past. What exactly are they?
Cultist is just some lost soul that's sworn his allegiance or her allegiance to some dark power, like a demon lord or some devil. Most conceal their true identities and hide behind an alias, but they're all dangerous. They seek destruction in their lord's name, so they're all dangerous.
Yes, they. What differentiates like a cultist from like a normal everyday bandit?
Well, I think it's the craze. Cultists usually have some sort of insanity to them. They're driven a little mad by the powers they serve and just the rituals that they often go through. I think that's the main thing. They're not in it just for the money. They're in it for the chaos.
Yeah, I always enjoy when you have an encounter or run in with like a cultist and they're just these lunatics with these insane ideologies and completely different from like a normal person's thought process. I think that's part of the reason why you can get so kind of weird and in the weeds with cultists as opposed to like a normal bandit who's there just for gold and riches. A cultist doesn't care about anything of worldly possession. They just care about the task at hand for their whatever entity they serve.
For sure. They're definitely one of the more cinematic, lower tier enemies. As soon as the hoods go up in the crowd and all the cultists start appearing, everyone knows what's going down.
Awesome. So what's your favorite thing about a cultist encounter as opposed to every other encounter? What makes a cultist encounter something that you enjoy?
I think it's a good way to introduce some horror into the scenario. Instead of just some bandits that are here to rob you, it's someone that wants to like create terror in your group and the people around you. They're really creepy. You can make them disgusting, just the worst type of people, care about nothing but who they serve. I think that's it. Just the horror factor with cultists. Yeah, my favorite thing about them.
So, do you like to really get ingrained with that horror aspect of them? Do you like to give them like very little humanity, or do you are they just some evil fanatic kind of person, or do you ever have them actually have like a little bit of humanity in their persona?
Sure. Yeah, of course. There's always the cultist who's not, fully into it. He's not as brainwashed as the rest of them. He's still, thinking about if he's doing the right thing or not. And it's fun to introduce a character like that into a setting. Yeah, for sure. Every cultist, not every cultist. Some cultists do have that little shred of humanity left, and it's fun to explore that.
What I know that like every time I have a cultist that I utilize, it always seems to be like a cultist of Orcus, or like it's always like Orcus or the Demogorgon or these like very like big names.
Yeah.
What are some other like interesting cultists that you've used that have different sort of like entities, or do you end up using like the main big like flashy name entities every time?
I do like using big flashy names. Like I'm really into the eldritch gods, sort of, Cthulhu and Dagon and the Teen and Yellow, Haster. Um, that's actually my favorite kind of stuff. But I do love creating my own pit fiends and elemental princes that
Yeah.
aren't, they're my creation,
Yeah.
and my cultists are different. I do enjoy doing that from time to time.
One thing that I absolutely love that is kind of a separate from the building is Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes created some very interesting cultists from the baseline, dude in a hood who has a dagger and he has an agenda. Now they have interesting abilities that are specific to their, patron of some sort. They have, Ball will give them very like certain ability that like maybe their weapon does an extra fire damage. I think as I was reading through them, my favorite ones were like Cultists of Borum. They have like this weird sludge that they can like place onto somebody, and it deals fire damage if they keep the sludge on them. And the Cultists of Hosk, there's like this weird leech thing that they can transform into and take control of a person's body for I think a round or a couple rounds. Things like that are just super interesting to me. That the inclusion of giving different abilities for different entities.
Yeah, I really like that as well. I really wish that it was even more expanded upon, and I like doing that on my own in my campaigns. For sure, if you're going through making cultists of an eldritch god like Cthulhu or something, you want to give them those psionic abilities, and like let them take over people's minds and stuff in the party.
Oh yeah,
it's fun.
Yeah, gotta give them. Gotta sprinkle in like you gotta. Have you ever had different cultist factions that the party has run into throughout one adventure?
Right. Oh, at the same time, two cultist factions that meet up.
Yeah, being able to distinctly see the differences between this is a cultist of Inaghu versus this is a cultist of Orcus, and like being able to witness the different abilities that each of these groups have.
For sure, yeah. If you see a bunch of cannibals in a cave, it's a telltale sign that Hinaju might be whispering into their ear, cackling. But if there's a bunch of zombies and skeletons being raised, I love seeing those different things, and having their clothing, describing their clothing differently, and their weapons also help a lot with that. I hate only using daggers for cultists.
Yeah.
There has to be a cultist who knows how to use a great sword every once in a while,
A staff.
So,
like
yeah.
You tell me all the people run around and they only know how to use like a knife.
Yeah, exactly. Give them some magic items too, wands, like you said, staves.
Yeah. Easy way to bring their CR a little bit higher than just 1/4. Give them some interesting.
1/8, I think.
Yeah, it probably is 1/8. A baseline cultist, I think, is a 1/8. I think a cult fanatic is maybe a half, 1/2, maybe 1.
Yeah, something like that.
But yeah, give them something. Give them an item that has some sort of significance. If you're a higher level party who can handle a fireball, give them like an orb of fireball, like a necklace of fireball that has 1 charge. If your party has the HP to handle that kind of thing.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think magic items, people don't use them enough with their enemies. It's always like something in a chest that you get after.
Yeah.
I think the enemy should be able to use that if they have it,
Yeah, if you're going to give it as treasure, why would the enemy not be using it already?
Right. I feel the same. It's that way, Boulder.
But yeah, I think that is a great roll into actually discussing some interesting abilities that we can give a higher tier boss that is a cultist that's going to be facing your party. So what are some interesting mechanics that you could give some sort of cultist, like cult fanatic leader, who you've been slogging through this dungeon filled with cultists, and finally you're at their, you're at their base where they're performing their little seance or their circle, and now you are facing their big bad. Like, what are some interesting things we can give these guys?
Yeah, I think cultists, when I think of cultists, I think of like sacrificial abilities, things that when they sacrifice their own life essence, they get the power. And so I think some abilities that are already fledged out from the Blood Hunter class,
Okay.
I think a lot of the blood maledicts could be used really well with cultists, and it'll give them some more things to use as reactions and things like that to help bolster them. Um, Cult fanatics right now are mostly cleric based, and I think
Yes.
you could definitely throw some warlock, throw some eldritch blast in
Yes,
there.
absolutely.
Some invocations maybe too would be really cool.
Mhm.
Yeah. What about you, Boulder?
I love the idea of honestly not a fan of the cleric spells that a cult fanatic gets. The one I do like inflict wounds. I do enjoy that one, but the rest of them
Hmm.
seem a little misplaced to me as a cultist. I much prefer warlock spells. Something like, what is it? Arms of Hadar or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, that, like,
Yeah.
giving them something, maybe as your party's killing, we'll say that they have your one cult fanatic leader in the room, and he's got his 6 other cultist members who are his closest advisors. And as you're hacking down these 6 advisors and you're killing them to get to the last guy, the blood that is pooling from their body turns into these blood tentacles on his arms, and you're now fighting, like, you're bolstering that main guy by killing all his pawns.
Yeah. Yeah, that's super cool.
Like,
Yeah, I think that the way they have it now with the wisdom build cleric spell list,
mhm.
it really makes me feel cornered into making my cult fanatics like a priest of a different religion who's hiding the fact that he's a cult.
Yeah.
That's the way I see it when I go into that stat block. And I really wish they just, yeah, threw in some warlock stuff,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Um,
Or
mhm.
just give them something more sinister. Like, I don't want to have, like, when I think of like spirit guardians, I'm thinking like, oh, like, there's like these, divine angelic beings that are like protecting me. I'm not thinking like, I'm sure it can go both ways. It can. If you want to keep spirit guardians on your cultist of Orcus, and there's a bunch of skulls floating around him as he casts it, like, totally doable to make it like a terrifying scene. It just depends on how you describe it
Mhm.
and if you want to keep it. I just don't prefer the cultist spells over the warlock spells, especially like you take like, what is it, like the Hunger of Hadar, the one that has like that big area that it
Yeah,
casts.
the black hole one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
throw your cultist in like a 50 by 25-foot room, and when combat starts, he casts Hunger of Hadar so that it's 10 feet away from him, covering that whole other portion of the room. And your players have to go through that whole 25-foot, and like your range characters now have to get within 10 feet of all of them. So it brings everybody all the way through that entire space, and it makes that whole extra 40 foot of room null and void because he's cast this
Mhm.
spell.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's awesome. I think cultists should really capitalize on the fact that they don't really care if they survive or not. They just have an overarching
Yeah.
purpose that's bigger than them. So I think, you know, if you have some like suicide big bomb or something,
Yeah.
that goes off, or even trading Shield of Faith that they have right now for something more like Armor of Agathis, where
Yes.
you still take the damage, but it hurts them
Yep.
too. You know, I think I think that would be a lot better for
absolutely.
cultists.
And especially like Armor of Agathis is another thing that they could even cast preemptively before, because like a cultist, if you're making your way all the way through this area that they're in, they probably know that you're coming, so he can already have that
Yep.
cast onto himself, and he doesn't even have to spend, the action to cast it on himself while in combat. He's already preemptively done that because he knows that you guys are coming.
Mm-hmm.
Your cultists aren't idiots. Like, they're running a whole cult. They're pretty smart, and they haven't been caught until you are now here. Like, they're not idiots.
Yeah, and with that, I was saying, they don't care about their lives, but the leader, he might know a little better. He might be doing some. Yeah, he might be doing some direct messages telling him, he has to survive to keep the cult going. And so if he needs to escape, he should have a way to escape, like give him a dimension door or invisibility, something like that. I mean, he needs a way.
I always love the idea that you're stopping a cult as they're performing their ritual. So as you're going in, they have the floor with all the runes, and they're performing their ritual, and you're hacking down the cultists because they're you're in battle with them, and as you're hacking them down, you're watching the blood flow into the streams of their circle, and you start realizing, oh no, like we are aiding their ritual right now by killing them. And if your party doesn't pick this up, maybe they kill all of them and the ritual is successful, and all of a sudden there's a super powerful devil or demon that spawns up in the city, and it just is causing chaos because they helped this cult finish their ritual by killing them all. So instead of it turning into like, oh, let's kill all the cultists kind of battle, it is now a let's try to save some of these cultists from killing themselves and us killing them so that they can't perform their ritual in time.
Yeah, I mean, as a DM, I love, during battle, giving them those little hints to what's happening. The blood starts to pool at the bottom, filling up all the runes, and watching the players' faces, realize and figure out that they're about to be in a whole load of trouble. This is one of my favorite things.
Yeah, and I don't know, to me, one thing, if you have like a cult leader and you're taking out all of his his minions, basically these other people who are following him, I love the idea that using either their bodies or their essence or their blood, like after they're dead, it empowers him in some sort of way. So like maybe even after he dies, after dying, you're like searching his body and you notice he has a bunch of runes on his, like carved into his skin, and like a minute after he's died, a poltergeist inhabits his body because he's given his body, and basically these runes are saying like, once my soul leaves this body is now yours to take, and like this poltergeist comes in and takes it, and now they have to fight. They already killed him, but now they got to fight this poltergeist.
Yeah, you can never go wrong with a multiple phase boss fight. I mean, it's just the tried and true, the classic method. I love that idea.
I feel like cultists lend themselves to that style of battle better than most do, because the ritual thing, they can have like weird runic carvings on their skin, or they can be wearing weird symbols that allow for like a different tier battle. They definitely include some sort of like secondary act into a cultist battle. That is one of like the coolest things you can have. Maybe whether it's they complete their ritual and you now have to deal with the aftermath of their ritual, or you have hacked them down and they now use that void of energy to now a secondary thing happens.
Yeah, I think giving them something, I know this is kind of contradicting myself earlier, but giving them like a cleric's divine intervention, but a dark intervention, like giving them the chance, rolling and giving them the chance for the dark power to save them, I think it's a great idea to just, all of a sudden, a rift opens up and just tentacles or like giant fiery like storm comes out,
Absolutely.
cultists are really cool. They don't do them justice in the books, you know.
But yeah, cultists just get wacky with them. Like you can get so weird with cultists.
Mm-hmm.
Like one, like they can cast these epics, not epic spells, but like these cool spells that make it so your ranged characters have to get in tighter to them, or that they can't use all that extra distance and stay so far away they have to get closer. As they kill people, like just because a cultist dies does not mean that is a good thing. Usually if a cultist dies, that is worse for your party. It's better to probably keep them alive and make that point in that combat to make sure that, oh, like you are killing these cultists, and then now like their bodies being used to form like an epic mold of like their bodies are being fused into one big body or something crazy.
Yeah. I was thinking earlier, another enemy that I don't see very often are flesh golems.
Yes.
And I think cultists, it's right up their alley, creating just like these disgusting creatures out of the people that they've slain, or even other cultists, maybe, you see other parts of cultists in there, just like shreds of their own cloaks and stuff in a flesh golem. That's bad news.
Especially if your cult leader did manage to escape, then you're fighting him for a second time, and now he has a bunch of flesh golems who are the bodies of those people that you killed last time.
Yeah. Or even if you injured the leader, if you cut off his arm or something, and he comes back with just like, this like bloated, like crazy, maybe another torso coming out of his torso or something, just
he's like melted
craziness.
Himself.
Yeah. You can go wild. Just go crazy with cultists. That's what they are.
Oh man. All right, so let's give some like definitive, like things that they statistic wise that they could give a cultist in a battle. We mentioned a couple things now of different things. So like, you walk into this room, you have like your cult leader that you're about to battle, and I like to use roughly the same amount of enemies as the party has whenever I'm doing this kind of, especially with like a cult. I definitely think that you should be using more rather than less enemies. So like you have your leader, and you have like 6 of his, closest advisors or something like that. So what's like a good like start off to the round? Like what is a good ability that this boss would use to kick off combat?
If it's a large space and he needs to close the gap, give him wall of fire or a wall of stone, make him bring the party to him. I think cultists, you should always give them, they should be ahead of the players. I always think reinforcements are really good for cultists, people hiding in the shadows, and then they all start coming in. So yeah, I think if you do a wall of fire, a wall of stone, something like that, to just force the players,
like something that forces them to come to him or her.
Zoning.
Yes, bring your party closer to these cultists. Like your party is probably not going to want to be close to these guys. They're lunatics. Bring them closer.
Yeah, and if it's too low level for that kind of spell, give them a physical trap. Have them, if it's in a cave or something, get the other cultists to set up some boulders that like roll in once the party enters.
Or like
it doesn't have to be a high level magic
collapse
spell.
the tunnel behind them that like rolls some rubble, so they're forced to come closer.
Yeah, exactly.
And then I think one of two things, once the combat has been like going 1 or 2 rounds, either have the ritual progressing as people fall, and or have the blood or the bodies of those fallen cultists be accumulating to make either the leader or like whoever's second in charge, if the leader's now dead, be bolstering that person to make them stronger. Maybe the blood's pooling, like I said, making big old blood tentacle arms, mimicking arms of Hadar, and like so now instead of doing like his weapon damage, he's doing like 2d6 or 3d6 bludgeoning damage, and he's able to grapple with these like coagulated blood arms.
For sure, yeah. If they're cultists of Demogorgon, I mean, take a look at his stat block, tone it way down, way down. But yeah, give the cult leader 4 tentacles that just like he wraps around and pulls people. That's sick. Yeah.
Look at who these guys worship and take like the epitome ability of that entity and dumb it way down to fit your party. You know, definitely don't have it if they can't handle that. You know, if they're a level 5 party, they can probably handle a little bit of a beating, but bring it down to your levels party and something that it'll beat them up, but it's not gonna just completely wipe them out. Take that epic ability that their patron has and just dumb it down and give it to that like leader as the battle progresses.
For sure. And I think, you know, some people, some groups play D&D more for the role-playing side than the combat, and the combat comes secondary. If you don't want to go, you know, this in-depth creating your own things, you could also just have them, you know, casting a summon greater demon spell or something like that, or make it like a ritual cast, you know, make it a full minute, you know, that cult leader has to survive a number of turns to cast it. I think that's an easy way to do it too.
Oh yeah. Make sure that your cult leader is not the only one who can do, you know, spells and stuff like that. Like at least one other person should be able to do something interesting, so that they're not targeting just that one person, because otherwise they will kill him fast and he won't get to do his cool thing. And so give somebody else some sort of concentration spell so that they have to be focusing fire a little bit on that person as well. You know, maybe you leave, you know, spirit guardians on one of them, and he's standing kind of in a central space, like it's the big beefy cultist, so he could take a couple of hits. And he's casting Spirit Guardians so that, you know, he can just stand there and withstand. He's taking the dodge action and he's just letting his Spirit Guardians do the work.
For sure. And give a cultist a bow, you know? They don't all have to run up, you know? Give one a bow and have him stand in the back. Yeah. Give them bows and crossbows, you know, or even slings and javelins, you know, just something so that they have...
Something that they can attack it.
Have a way to distance themselves. Yeah, because if it's a party with a barbarian, you know, you need some distance from that guy.
You gotta break that wizard's concentration or that druid's concentration somehow.
Yeah. I think
do not make it easy.
Yeah, no, do not. Whenever I'm planning a combat encounter, I always go step up from where I think it should be. Because my players always pull out something, you know, that I'm not thinking about at the time. Yeah. I think a good moment, or a cult fight, is also a good moment to create your own cursed magic items. I think if a cult leader's holding a sword that's like, you know, sucking in the blood of his fallen allies, or every time it cuts through someone, it starts to like grow like serrated edges and stuff. Or something like that. Super cool way to do that. One, you know, there's always one person in the party who's willing to hold on to that for a while, you know, and it's a great way to throw it in.
Their interest just enough.
Yeah.
Oh man, I really enjoy that one. Like, it could even be like, you know, the more hits he takes, the worse his weapon gets, and like, you know, as he deals damage and he gets damage done to him, like his weapon gets more and more powerful. I love that.
Yeah, I need to use that one.
You know, it starts dealing a little bit of necrotic damage as it starts out as like a dagger, and like the dagger starts to disappear under just this blood blade that is being formed, or like just this you know, dark energy blade that is now being formed, and the more he battles you,
the more it's insane.
Man, I like that one a lot. But yeah, definitely make that sort of item like cursed for sure.
There has to be a downside to that type of power for sure.
Yes. You know, somebody's gonna pick it up.
Unless you're just
gonna be sweet.
Yeah, give it to the murder hobo and make him learn his lesson. I think another thing that cultists are missing are racial traits.
Okay.
I think most of the cultist stat blocks are just built off of human, but all the different races have really cool things. Yeah, and I think, you know, giving them some of the tieflings like innate spell casting, or you know, some of the other traits like that is a really cool way to spice things up with them.
Then they have resistances to, like, you know, a tiefling has resistance to fire damage. You know, your wizard comes in, blasts and fireball, and you got 2 tiefling cultists that, you know, already half that damage, and if they succeed, they quarter it. Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's missing in a lot of the different, at least in the monster manual, the non-player characters.
Enemies are always, they always base them off of just a stand. Not even a, like, you can even make it a variant human if you wanted it to be still be a human. Give them some sort of feat.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's actually a really good idea. Giving some non-players feats is a good way to go.
Give them the give them the great weapon master feat, like something like that. Like,
yeah. And, you know, even just giving the normal cultists the magic initiate feat is a great way to just give them a balanced few spells
like that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, that is a really great point that I feel like is constantly overlooked. You know, your enemies are not always going to be humans, and make sure that it.
Yeah.
If you're not going to make it a human, make sure they have the same abilities as those. You know, whatever. If you're using a lizard folk, they have the same abilities as a lizard folk for the player characters. It's not different.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the same way. Also, giving them some, you know, side creatures, maybe animals or different types of monstrosities that they might have wrangled up, you know, to throw at the characters is a good way to keep some of the cultists alive while they're doing their different rituals and stuff during the fight. Throwing a giant boar or snakes or something, you know, is a cool way to do that.
To me, a cultist probably doesn't take care of their animals super well, so, you know, they probably have them in like cages.
No.
They have them in these cages.
Yeah.
You know, they pull the chains to unleash the cages. Like, that creature's probably just going to attack whatever is closest. So if you get farther away and there's a cultist in between you and that creature, it's probably going to attack that cultist now. So then that gives your players an extra little thing, like, positioning wise, to think about.
Yeah, for sure. A rabid animal that they unleash is just going to go after anything.
Yeah,
so
a giant constrictor snake, like,
yeah,
you know, you can throw whatever beast in there you want, monstrosity, aberration, you know.
Yeah, you can get really wacky with it. I mean, the way I like to play Dungeons and Dragons, I like to find art or miniatures from other games and content and adapt it to Dungeons and Dragons if I like it, you know?
Oh, absolutely.
So if I see some crazy crab tentacle monster, you know, I'm going to make a stat block, and the cultists are going to, they're going to open the cage, and that thing's just going to be, you know, clicking its claws and going at it. Yeah.
Get wacky with it. Cultists are a great spot to just throw the weirdest shit in your brain.
Yep.
At them.
For sure.
Oh man, do you have any specific times that you've had, you know, utilized or been alongside some occultists in your experience?
Yeah, you know, I brought it up a little bit, but in my current campaign that I'm DMing, there's a lot of cult activity going on in the city that they're in at the moment, and we just had a fight. They had been investigating how the cultists got into the city in the first place. The cultists committed some assassinations at one point, and so the party had been investigating. And they traced them back to a ship that was carrying exotic animals and some travelers from a nearby city. And they found the warehouse that the ship's contents were supposed to be stored in. They decided to just knock on the door when they got there. So some of the crew from the ship answered the door while the cultists started hiding in some of the different storage boxes. The party just entered, walked right into the trap. The fight started with the captain, just like we were talking about earlier, opening a cage, and a giant monster came out, like shrieking. I think it did kill a cultist like right away, and then started heading after the party. I think round 2 or round 3, the cultists started getting out of the boxes and like putting their cloaks on, and walking out of the shadows. So they were fighting a bunch of these like different pirates and crewmates with the cultists and monsters, and I was a few of the cultists were walking to the other cages to open them up at the same time, and so the players were trying to stop them from getting to the cages and stuff. It was a fun time.
Yeah, make it a multi-objective battle, killing cultists.
Yeah,
and stopping them from doing whatever they're trying to do.
Yeah. How about you, Boulder? What's your favorite cultist moment?
My favorite cultist moment was probably had one single cultist leader who was working alongside some goblins and an ogre, and he was basically trying to perform a ritual to unleash a long dead ancient giant warrior. So he had captured some children from the nearby town and was siphoning their life energy and putting it into the skeleton of this giant warrior to resurrect it and have it under his and his patron's control. And so, the party hacked down their goblins. They were fighting the big ogre while he's performing his ritual. I gave him like a levitate spell, so he was like floating up in the air and like performing his ritual.
Nice.
And like, he's like clouded in he was clouded in dark shadows. Like he turned around at one point and there was just black mist emanating off of him. Like you couldn't really see his face because they were too far away. Eventually they hacked down the ogre finally, and like a couple orcs who were helping with some suppressing fire with their crossbows. So they couldn't progress because there was this ogre and these orcs just suppressing him while he's performing this thing. And they finally killed them all and were able to get over there. And they broke his ritual because they shot at him, and he took some damage, which broke his concentration on the ritual, and he wasn't able to finish. And it was a pretty epic moment. The kids barely like an inch away from death, as he'd been like siphoning their life essence for like a couple minutes at that point. So they're weak, and they had to like bring them back and like take them back and make sure that they were okay. I loved it.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Definitely. Yeah.
Let us know if you guys have any crazy stories of some cultists used, and just tell us all about it. We'd love to read it.
Yeah, if you have specifics on some of the different dark patrons that some powers that they give to their cultists, let us know.
Yeah,
we always like to hear about
cool power down there.
Ideas. Yeah.
Any final words?
Cultists are cool. Use cultists more.
Use more cultists. Always use more cultists. They're rad.
Always more.
All right, we'll talk to you guys later.